Hello everyone, I'm Steven. My previous class, I summarized the ways psychology helps people using 4 words: positioning, correlation, acceptance, and change. By now, you've learned that psychology has numerous schools and theories, often contradicting each other. How can you navigate this complex landscape? Don't worry too much. I've organized the field of psychology into 6 major paths based on chronological order: structuralism, functionalism, psychoanalysis, behaviorism, cognitive science, and humanism. Understanding these 6 major paths will provide you with a rough roadmap of psychology. In this lesson, we'll start with the beginning of psychology, structuralism. Do you remember the earliest schools of psychology? In the previous lesson, we discussed Wilhelm Wundt, the German who established the world's first psychology laboratory in 1879, marking the beginning of modern psychology. What did Wundt research in his laboratory? It might disappoint you to know that he had people lie down in a chair and, upon hearing a sound from a small ball, press a stopwatch to record their reaction time. You might be thinking, is that it? How does this relate to psychology? However, the grand and magnificent modern psychology system has its origins in such mundane experiments. Starting with Wundt, more and more psychologists began conducting similar experiments, and their methods were rather dull. A contemporary of Wundt, Ebbinghaus, was interested in human memory. He invented over 2,000 meaningless syllables and had people memorize them, then measured the patterns of memory and forgetting. The famous Ebbinghaus forgetting curve was established through such research. Sometimes I wonder if I had lived in that era, I might not only have avoided studying psychology, but I wouldn't want to be a subject in their studies either. It seemed quite tedious. You might be thinking that these studies were purely meant to torture people and satisfy the curiosity of a bunch of scientific oddballs. What value do they hold for our everyday lives? Indeed, many of the conclusions from these early studies may not make a significant difference for the average person. Some of these findings may even seem outdated today. However, their research employed a perspective that I believe is an essential part of the first lesson in introductory psychology, and that is to position individuals as having different psychological structures. Yes, the task of psychology is to position individuals, which began with structuralism. Wundt had a student named Titchener who summarized that we study what in a person's psychology rather than why. This means that we shouldn't consider a person as a whole but should use an empirical scientific attitude to break down the objective variables that exist within. Titchener coined a name for this research perspective: structuralism. Also known as constructivism in some textbooks. This marked the birth of the earliest modern school of psychology. The birth of structuralism signified that our exploration of human psychology shifted towards positioning their psychological structures. New task: positioning psychological structures. What are psychological structures, and how do they impact our lives? I'll provide you with 3 scenarios to illustrate. The first scenario is about describing a person. Imagine a situation: a boss asks HR, "How were the 2 candidates you interviewed today?" If HR responds, "I liked the second job applicant and wasn't very impressed with the first one," the boss will surely say, "Don't rush to conclusions, first, tell me what these 2 candidates are like." At this point, HR needs to present a set of data and say, "I assessed these 2 candidates on 5 dimensions. The first one excels in research abilities, but communication skills are his weak point. The second candidate has more balanced abilities, performing well in multiple areas." In this scenario, HR has broken down the candidate's attributes into specific dimensions, which is akin to what structuralism did in psychology by breaking down the elements of consciousness into components such as sensations, perceptions, and feelings. By understanding and identifying these distinct aspects, HR can provide a more nuanced and detailed description of the candidates, allowing the boss to make a more informed decision. The second scenario involves relationships and compatibility. Imagine 2 people, person A and person B, who are about to start a project together. Initially, they might get along well and collaborate effectively. However, as the project progresses, conflicts and misunderstandings arise. To address this situation, it's important to consider the components of their personalities, working styles, and communication patterns. By understanding the psychological structures of person A and person B, we can identify potential sources of friction and take steps to improve their collaboration. The third scenario pertains to personal growth and development. Let's say an individual wants to improve their public speaking skills. They might begin by breaking down the components of effective public speaking, such as confidence, articulation, body language, and audience engagement. By addressing and working on each of these components, they can make targeted improvements in their public speaking abilities. These scenarios demonstrate the practical relevance of understanding psychological structures. By breaking down complex psychological phenomena into their constituent parts, we gain insights that can be applied to various aspects of our lives, from interpersonal relationships to personal growth and development. Now, let's move on to the limitations of structuralism. The structuralist perspective, while valuable, is not a one-size-fits-all approach. In some situations, it may not offer the best solution. It's akin to trying to assemble all the organs of the human body, blowing a breath of life into it, and expecting it to turn into a living person. Just as understanding the individual organs doesn't give you a full understanding of the entire body, understanding all the elements of consciousness doesn't necessarily give you a comprehensive understanding of the whole person. Consider the scenario where HR is evaluating job candidates. While using multiple variables and data to assess candidates is convenient, does this approach always result in a more accurate understanding of the candidates? Could it be that some people may not excel in any of these data points but possess an intangible quality that stands out when you meet them in person? This quality might not be easily captured by quantitative measures. People often experience this when they meet someone who simply clicks with them without an obvious explanation. Sometimes, overly dissecting individuals into distinct psychological structures can be counterproductive. For example, imagine a person who has analyzed themselves thoroughly but struggles to take action. When asked why they lack initiative, they might reply, "Because I lack executive skills." When asked why they lack executive skills, they may cite various factors that, according to structuralism, represent separate psychological variables. In such cases, structuralism may not be the most effective approach. Instead, a more holistic perspective known as functionalism can be valuable. I'll introduce functionalism in the next lesson. In summary, structuralism was the earliest modern school of psychology and made a significant contribution by introducing an outsider's perspective. It allowed us to position individuals as having distinct psychological structures and objectively solve problems based on these structures.